Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our September Board of Trustees meeting. We'll get started. The first item on the agenda is the prayer and the pledge. And with everyone, please stand. Dr. Stiles.
May we pray. God of all creation, we bow before you tonight to thank you for this beautiful autumn day, for your majestic presence throughout the earth, and for the bountiful blessings you continue to bestow upon this nation. As we welcome this new season, may the early sunset remind us to take time to rest from our labors. May the vibrant colors of the leaves display the wonder of your creation, and may the cooler days remind us of your ever warm and loving presence. As a board, we thank you for each individual who is present tonight and for their loving devotion to our children and to our school. For our dedicated employees who give selflessly each day to serve our students. And for our superintendent and our district leaders who have already provided a full day of service, yet remain among us to advocate and provide support. May your presence be felt by all in our midst. And may you grant wisdom and understanding in all matters shared and presented so that we might better serve our children and our community. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Everybody please remain standing. Ms. Wells has an introduction.
So I am pleased tonight to introduce our pledge leader. It is Madison Grooms. It's going to lead us. And so Madison is in the 5th grade at Simpsonville Elementary, which is a Leader in Me Lighthouse School. She embodies the very value of those programs, which as her principal describes her as a strong leader for Simpsonville Elementary. She's the president this year of the Student Lighthouse team. She's in the Safety Patrol, and next week she is going to be inducted in the Junior Beta Club. So a little known fact that we're going to share is Madison was actually a preemie. She was born 10 weeks early and weighed only 2 pounds. So she got a little extra attention at the beginning and has just taken off and run on her own ever since as a leader. So Madison, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madison. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 3.01, appearance of visitors. We have 7 individuals signed up to speak. And for the board members, if you're looking at your list of speakers, start from the bottom. We'll start from the bottom going up. The numbering got out of whack a little bit. So our first speaker is Jack Logan. Oh, excuse me, just a minute before we start, Mr. Logan. Dr. Stiles, will you read the?
Yes.
For us?
As each speaker's name is called, he or she should proceed to the podium at the end of the board dais where there is a microphone and a light system. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak to the board. The light will be green for the first 2 minutes and will turn yellow when 1 minute remains on the speaker's allotted time. In keeping with board policy KCA, abusive language or personal attacks aimed at students or staff members will not be permitted. All speakers are expected to behave in an orderly and respectful manner. The board will not engage in discussion with the speaker or respond to comments. The superintendent will designate a member of the staff to respond to each speaker in an appropriate and timely manner.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Now our first speaker is Jack Logan.
My name is Jack Logan. I'm the founder of Put Down the Guns Now Young People organization. I want to take the time to thank this board for placing the Evolved Technology System into the schools to protect children from being hurt by a gun. And again, I want to thank you for placing into the correct path that is required for a middle school student and under to be accompanied by an adult to go out to a football game. Those are ways to connect the parents back together, spend quality time. This past week over at J.L. Mann High School with the Greenville High School games, I witnessed so many young fathers with their sons at the ball games because of what y'all done and throughout the great state of South Carolina. And also I want to thank, some of y'all are not running again for re-election. I want to thank y'all for your service that you've given to Greenville County and to each staff member and to the students. And I wish the best for the school board, because working in the community is a task, and putting up with some people, it's another task. But again, Jack Logan, I thank you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Next speaker is Eugene Titus.
My name is Eugene Titus, and I'm here today to let you know I used to work for Greenville County. I started out as a one-on-one aide, moved up to work in the maintenance and security department, and I left Greenville County School and took on another position, and I came back to Greenville County Schools because COVID came, and I put in a notice, but I wasn't able to fulfill the notice because of my daughter. And I had to stay at home and take care of my daughter. So they put me on a can't return, but I got offered a position because I take her to school. Her mother's not able to do it because she's now quit her job to drive a bus. And so my in-laws are older and they're not able to do it. So if y'all can just reconsider for me to be able to take my daughter to school and take her and bring her home. My daughter made all A's and she got her progress report last week and she's still making all A's. So thank you for your time and thank you for your support. And thank you for your consideration. Just let me get back, have one more opportunity to be able to take care of my daughter and raise her in a good way. And thank y'all for all y'all do.
Thank you, Mr. Titus. Next speaker is Mary Coleman.
Good evening. I've spoken here before. My name is Mary Ann Coleman. I'm a grandparent of 7 children who have attended Greenville County schools or who are currently in attendance. I was a phys ed and health teacher with the Philadelphia schools and taught high school classes. It was determined that I teach all of the health classes, the reproductive and birth cycle. What I found was that the teens were more interested in how they stacked up to the kid next to them. In those days, we had no textbooks with illustrations. So what I did was I found this illustrated book. I don't know if you recognize it. It's Leonard Nielsen, and he was the first man that was able to photograph the fetus in the womb. So they were just thrilled to have something to look at. And it wasn't because they were titillating pictures, but they showed, we had stages of a child, 4 different stages from the age of 4 years old to a 24-year-old, male and female. And they were fascinated with that because now these are high school kids. So they were wondering how they stacked up physically. And that's basically, you know, if you don't play sports and you don't go into the showers with people, sometimes you don't even know. But anyway, so of course, after that we discussed non-protected sex, and they realized that they needed to think first before following their impulses. But to the most important reaction came when I shared the pics of the progression, which is I just talked about. So I think kids today are the same as they were in the 70s and 80s. They are curious about how they stack up to other people their age. So, so they weren't, like I said, they weren't titillated by the pictures, but they were appreciative. And an adult spoke to them about how they look and how they feel about themselves. So here's what my purpose was in saying all this. I really don't agree with exposing children to alternative lifestyles, sexual variance, or that are not appropriate for children, especially in elementary or middle school. In fact, the teenagers today are more confused than they were in the 70s and 80s. So let's not add to the confusion, okay? They have enough stuff going on. There's plenty of time for them to decide their path in life. It is not a teacher or a school counselor's duty to add to their confusion. My suggestion is, please do not have these alternative
Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
books that are
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Your time's up.
and explicit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Next speaker is Susanna Saravia.
Hi, my name is Susana Saravia, and as a taxpayer and a grandparent, I'm concerned that in South Carolina school, teachers and administration are recognizing students as cats. In 1 Corinthians 15:39 says, all flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of animals, another of fish, and another of birds. In Genesis 1:26 says, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over all the cattle, over all the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on earth. I moved to South Carolina in 2006 from California because they would have destroyed my kids with their curriculum. Less than 10 years ago, we would have taken a child to a mental institution if a child was acting like an animal. This is not normal. Yet the problem in South Carolina doesn't start with the child, but with the education system that bought into a lie that they need to respect irrational behavior of people because we are told if we don't comply with their demands, we don't love the person. Let me say, we can love the person, but we do not accept a behavior that will destroy the minds, souls, and bodies of the future of our children. Have you ever applied to BMW? You will go to a test to see how mentally stable you are. They wouldn't want someone that will attach the motor of the car on top of the roof or leave the car with no seats. Do you know they even test you for drugs in your hair? That is the way they find if your body is intoxicated, and they will not hire you. Yet we allow a student to continually disrupt the class with nonsense and with any inappropriate behavior they choose. Question: do you take a student to the Humane Society to be treated? No. When we have mental instability, the proper place to be treated is in the mental institution, for it is created for people and not for animals. Yet I see the problem does not lie entirely with the student. It comes from our federal government blackmailing our state that they will withhold millions of taxpayers' dollars if we don't comply with their demands. Let me say, if you were to hire Mr. Royster today back again, would you allow him to have a litter box next to him?
Thank you, Ms. Saravia. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker is Lynn Brown.
I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for my life and for all of you. I'd like to thank the board for my time to speak tonight. I'll begin with the quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing." I come as a parent of children who attended Greenville County Schools and as a current Greenville County taxpayer to speak tonight. It has come to my attention that several schools in the Greenville County area are being allowed to violate the dress code. I'm going to assume the best about you members and assume you don't know. I'm also going to remind you, you took an oath to uphold the state constitution and the Constitution of the United States, so help you God. The school dress code states in part that students are expected to dress and be groomed in such a way as to not distract or cause disruption in the education process or orderly operation of the school. Therefore, clothing deemed distracting or otherwise disruptive will not be permitted. Now I'm going to give you a visual of what I'm talking about. Is this distracting to you? Are any of you confused as to whether I'm a cat or a person? There are multiple reports of students being allowed to dress, act, and identify as cats. Yes, you heard me correctly. Cat ears, tails, whiskers, fake paws, and they can meow, hiss, growl, and be led around on leashes by other students. The fellow students, teachers, and staff are being required to refer to them as such or fear retribution. In addition to violation of the dress code, at best is a minimum of every person's First Amendment rights afforded in the Constitution of free speech and freedom of religion, and at worst, this is psychological child abuse. All creation was created by God. Male and female were created in God's image. Though all things were created by God, only men and women were created in his image. Our rights to speak freely about our beliefs are afforded to us by God and stated as such in our Constitution. However, we do not have the right to make others believe the same way or to silence, threaten, or intimidate them if they don't. We live in America, which is a republic. Children are very smart. Children intuitively know this is wrong, and they know their classmates aren't real cats. The parents are smart too. I don't know of a single parent who went to the vet to deliver their child. Reports have come out at the following schools: Blue Ridge Middle and High, Greer Middle, Riverside High, and Woodmont, just to name a few. I'm charging you school board trustees of these schools to investigate immediately and make all schools that are allowing these violations comply with the dress code. I'm charging the rest of you trustees with the responsibility to hold them accountable. You all are called to be servants of the school as staff, as students, and the taxpayers. And if you don't take care of this immediately, and I and others find out this is still going on, then I will encourage every single Greenville County resident, student, teacher, etc., to enroll their pets in Greenville County schools, identifying them as students. I'm also asking Greenville County students, teachers, and staff to band together and speak up if this is going on at your school, and I, for one, will stand with them. The insanity stops when we, the South Carolina citizens, take a stand for truth.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next speaker is Danielle Kinsley.
Hi, my name is Danny Kinsley. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist specializing in autism and sensory processing. I'm also a previous adjunct professor of child development and lifespan development, but I'm here today to speak to you as a fellow parent. My son will be attending Greenville County Public Schools next year for kindergarten, and I'd like to share with you why I believe it's so important to protect recess and unstructured outdoor playtime in our schools. So what do kids need when it comes to daily exercise and outdoor time? According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, all kids should be getting at least 60 minutes per day of moderate to vigorous activity, and that's preferably outside. We're talking about joyous, exciting, heart-pumping, sweat-inducing play, things like running, jumping, climbing, tumbling, swinging, balancing, throwing, catching, and playing cooperative games with friends. So we know what kids need, but what are they actually getting? Many schools are greatly reducing or even eliminating recess time altogether due to increased pressure to meet academic demands. However, this plan is actually counterproductive, as kids who need to play and to move their bodies cannot learn optimally. Their brains are not in a state of alert receptiveness when they have been trying to sit still for far too long. On average, American children currently spend only about 4 to 7 minutes per day in unstructured outdoor play. Yes, that's 4 to 7 minutes. So we know that kids need much more outdoor playtime than they're actually getting, but why is this so important? Why is it so important to protect this time? For a lot of kids in public school systems across the nation, the time they spend in recess at school may be the only safe, quality outdoor time that they're really getting in an entire day. We should never, never take away recess from kids, especially as a form of behavioral punishment. Often the kids who are most likely to lose their recess time are the ones who really need it the most. These are the kids who are constantly fidgeting. The teachers in this room know these kids. They can't stay in their seats, they're disruptive during class, and they might even exhibit behaviors such as falling asleep or having outbursts. And these are the kids who really benefit from and need the sensory input of intense physical activity during recess. We have an obligation to protect this valuable time for our most vulnerable students at the local and state levels for this reason. Outdoor unstructured play helps to rewire the brain. It builds connections between the right and left hemispheres. It helps kids to become more coordinated and better thinkers and problem solvers. These things really come through in the classroom because gross motor builds muscular and core strength that is necessary for kids to sit up straight in desks, to establish handwriting and fine motor skills, and to combat constant fidgeting and fatigue in the classroom. Again, the teachers in here know what that looks like. It provides kids with the opportunity to self-regulate, which leads to more intense focus and better behavior and participation. And our kids with sensory processing or attention deficit issues truly need this time of play regularly throughout the day to facilitate their participation in learning. It's also important to remember that recess time at school might just be the only unstructured time throughout the day when our kids really have the opportunity to interact with their peers without direct adult intervention. This helps to build communication, problem solving, confidence, and conflict resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsley.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Sasha Patton. Sasha Patton.
Good evening. My name is Sasha Patton. I've spent 14 years as a public educator. I have a master's degree in elementary education, and I'm a licensed teacher. My boys are 8 and 3 years old. I'm here tonight as a public advocate for all of our children. In Greenville County, we have 53 elementary schools. Within a 6.5-hour school day, most of our elementary schools provide just 20 to 25 minutes of recess. Middle schoolers, who are only 11, 12, and 13 years old, don't have scheduled recess time. Some have the option to go outside, but no time is specifically set aside during the school day for unstructured outdoor play. This year, I've worked tirelessly at the local and state level bringing awareness to this issue. Every last person I have spoken with agrees that more recess is the answer. Parents, teachers, principals, district officials, members of this board, state lawmakers, local organizations, everyone agrees. And then they digress and say, but our hands are tied. And my response is no, they are not. Unstructured outdoor time has been shown to profoundly support academic learning, mental and physical health, and decrease teacher burnout. Part of the mission statement of this board is to develop character, leadership, and citizenship. By limiting recess, we are denying our children healthy social development. Unstructured play and conversation is the impetus for developing character, leadership, and citizenship. Immediate solutions that we can put into practice right now in Greenville County are: 1, direct teachers and administrators to adjust their daily schedules and set aside a total of 30 minutes of recess. 2, we can discontinue the use of screen time when indoor recess is necessary. Games on Chromebooks are not a substitute for recess. And 3, guarantee recess to every child, kindergarten through 8th grade. Recess should not be taken away as a consequence. At the state level, we can reduce the number of required instructional minutes to create room within the existing school day for 60 minutes of recess. Other changes may need to be made to ensure teachers won't face additional work or pressure. I confess I am dreaming big. We would never remove math or reading from the school day, yet we have chosen the near removal of developmentally necessary movement and play. It is neurologically less likely a child will excel in writing or science if their vestibular system is underdeveloped. The cost of our oversight is too great. I believe Greenville County Schools and South Carolina can be trailblazers by making this crucial change. The choice is ours, and I'd be grateful for the opportunity to work on this with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patton. Thanks, everyone. That concludes our visitors part of the agenda. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank Ms. Bush and Expressions for the flowers up here. I had forgot to do that earlier. Thank you, Ms. Bush. The next item on our agenda, 4.01, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. I think it's important tonight as the superintendent's report to address a number of false rumors that have been circulating in our community and on social media, some of which you were alluded to here tonight. claiming that our schools are putting in litter boxes for students who behave like cats or other animals, and allowing students to respond to teachers by meowing, among other things. The things that have been described would be disruptive to school and therefore not be allowed. These types of rumors have been documented as circulating across the country for at least 9 months, and to our knowledge have all been unfounded. Regardless of what is or is not happening in other parts of the country, I can assure you, our parents, our community, that if students behave inappropriately, it'll be addressed. And Greenville County Schools has not and will not be implementing any of the things described in those rumors or those social media posts that are circulating. The most important thing for me to leave with all of us tonight is if parents have a concern about this issue or any other issue in one of our schools, they should first and foremost reach out to that school's principal. If it is concerned about the district level, or if for some reason the concern is not sufficiently addressed at the school level, to one of our district's ombudsmen. That's their job. Help resolve issues, solve problems. I'd never imagined I would have to deliver this kind of superintendent's report. But as the week has progressed this week and last week, culminating in some comments made tonight, it's clear that some people are getting all their information from social media and the internet, drawing conclusions based on that information, as opposed to going directly to the source. Have students on occasion warn things that might be disruptive, following some sort of trend that's popular at the moment? Absolutely. There's nobody in this room, no matter what your age or when you went to school or when you graduated, that you can't think back about some group of students or one or two individuals that wanted to stand apart from the others and draw attention to themselves in some way. That will probably last as long as there are young people and as long as there are schools. But the kinds of things that we've heard circulated on social media, read about and seen, are absolutely not the kinds of things happening in our schools. And before you believe that, more importantly, before you pass it along, we would ask that you talk to the principal of your local school. Thank you very much. That concludes our superintendent's report tonight, Mr. Meek.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. Interesting times. Next item is our action items for 5.01. The recommended motion coming from the ad hoc committee for board self-assessment does not need a second, is to approve the revised board self-assessment instrument as presented. Is there any questions? Any comments? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, 5.02, naming a Blue Ridge High School football stadium. The recommended motion coming from the committee of the whole does not need a second, is to approve the naming of the Blue Ridge High School football stadium in honor of Jim Howard. Any comments? Any questions? Hearing none. All in excuse me. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Excuse me a second. See, that helps. Next item on the agenda, 5.03. Recommended motion from the committee of the whole is to approve the attached list as appointments to the Material Review Committee for a 3-year term. Any questions or comments? Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if we could just maybe step back here for a second, because we talked a little bit about this at the committee of the whole meeting, but I had some questions from constituents and just wanted to make sure that those questions were addressed here. So there is a list, a pool of 256 candidates. I believe is the most that we've ever had who've applied to be a part of this work. All 256 are not being approved to serve on a 256-person committee, correct? So can we just talk a little bit about the list that we have here, the categories that are here, and how a person might be taken off of that list to serve on the committee?
We have, Mr. Lewis, to your question, I think we mentioned this in the committee of the whole. Dr. McDavid is working with Mr. McCoy to draft a proposed administrative rule that would carry forward all the process and procedure for that. In short, once they finish that, they'll send it to senior leadership team and Mr. Webb and to me for our review. But in short, you would go in the category, one category. There are people that fit 2 or 3. I believe they were solicited as a primary category, Mr. McCoy, is that correct? So they would go in as their primary category, even though they may have 2 or 3. Therefore, you have only one chance of being selected for a committee as opposed to 2 or 3. The only reason we would go to a secondary or a third would be highly unlikely because of you mentioned the number we have. At one time, we didn't have anywhere near that number of people. We might have had to go to a secondary category just to fill a seat on the committee. Because as you recall, there's seats reserved for parents, community members, teachers, and then a student at the high school level, and parents, community, and teachers at the elementary and middle school level. So we're working through that. The way we've done in the past, because it was a much smaller number, we simply go down the list and call people and say, can you be at this meeting on these dates where your responsibilities would be to do this, and then make a final decision. And basically, if they said, yes, I can do that, then they became a seat on that committee. And if they couldn't, we went to the next person, because they got to agree to be at all the meetings. Having 200 and something, we probably need a more randomized selection process. We would include that in the development of the administrative rule. So there'd be process in there, somewhat akin, and I think we described it this way before, to having a pool of jurors and you draw them out for a trial, a similar concept where we have a pool of eligible participants. You draw them out for this challenge to meet the seat requirements on that committee. They would then go to the end of the line, so to speak. But again, much like comparison jury duty, if you get drawn, there's a period of time for which you're not eligible to serve again, or you're not asked to serve again. We'd move them somehow to the bottom of the line. They're prepping those details for us to review. We should have them ready in the next 10 days, I would think, Mr. McCoy.
And so just to clarify, so there's a list of individuals, for example, that are identified as parents.
Yes, sir.
So if there's a book for at the elementary school level that needs to be reviewed, then we would select a parent who is a parent of an elementary school child currently enrolled in our district to review that.
That's correct. And because it's a 3-year term, you could be, for example, you could be, if you were a parent, not a board member, you could be on the elementary committee where one drawn this year, but not next year. Your parent status would move you to the middle school level committee. So you wouldn't lose your parent status unless your child graduated from the system, but you might move from eligibility from elementary to middle or middle to high.
But you could also, I assume, lose your parent status if you disenrolled your child from Greenville County Schools.
Absolutely.
And so at the time you were called, you may be a parent today of a child at Greenville County School, but 2 years from now when you're selected, if you're not, then you, even though you've been approved as a part of this 256-person pool, you may not be eligible at that moment to serve on that committee.
That is correct.
Okay. The other question I had is just about kind of the decorum of this committee. And I had a colleague up here come to me after the last meeting to say, well, you're just singling out people that you disagree with, and you don't want to have a discussion with people that may have differing opinions from you. And I just want to be clear that I think that this committee, like any other work group that this board approves, exists to have a meaningful discussion about a subject. And with students on this committee and with staff being expected to serve on this committee, it's really important to me that community members, parents, clergy have to follow the same rules of decorum that we would expect from an employee or from a student who is maybe operating in this this capacity.
Yes, sir, we would certainly expect the members of that committee to conduct themselves in a manner that is professional and respectful of the opinions of others, understanding that their opinions will differ.
Yeah, it's such a great opportunity because you think about, looking at a book and having a diverse committee of individuals who represent different perspectives, talking about that book from different perspectives and trying to reach consensus on whether this book is an appropriate text to have in our classrooms, seems very similar to the type of conversations that we encourage in our AP Lit classrooms every day. In fact, today at our Rotary meeting, the AP Lit teacher from one of our high schools, who is being recognized as one of the district teachers of the year, you shared that with me, that her model of classroom instruction is to have students get around and talk about how they may be approaching this text from a different place. So I think it's exciting that a committee would follow the same kind of model of discussion and deliberation and respectful consideration of each other's ideas as a student group would be expected to do in an AP Lit class. I know, though, that there are individuals here who, have not necessarily carried themselves that way in our meetings. There are individuals here who have disrupted board meetings by following students out into the parking lot to openly disagree with them because the student may have shared a position during public comment that they disagreed with. There's individuals on this list who have brought bullhorns on our property and yelled at board members and staff members from 3 feet away with a bullhorn. And so I just think it's important to me to be able to reassure my constituents that there is an expectation of appropriate behavior that is going to happen in these committee meetings when these individuals are serving with students and with staff.
There would be to each committee that's convened a charge to that committee, and we'll gladly share with you the charge to that committee.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Ms. Wells?
So, thank you for following up on that, Mr. Lewis, because I wanted to ask the same question about the administrative rules. So that's going to be in the next 10 days, you said, or so? That'll be sent out to reflect?
We hope to have completed the entire process in the next 10 days, depending on folks' schedules, that would be our desire.
So this maybe it'll be in the administrative rule, but if not, I'm just want to clarify based on this past year when we had the book review committee do some work. If I remember correctly, there were some people that were on the committee that couldn't make the meetings in person, or I believe I'm correct, that they couldn't make the meetings, but they sent in their comments or something. So I guess I'm kind of curious, especially now that we have 256 people, is the format such that it's going to be a group of people convening and having discussion and conversation? Is that going to be a stipulation and a requirement for the committee?
Now, that might be, we may need to accommodate perhaps that through a Zoom connection or something like that, but they need to be present for the discussion. And with that number of people, I don't imagine that will be an issue. That's one of the things when they're contacted initially that we have to say, well, here's what we need for you to be able to commit to do.
And remind me, if there is an appeal, it goes back to that same group of people first? I can't remember. I should have looked at the policy again.
Ask that a different way, Ms. Willis.
So if the committee meets and they make a recommendation and then, or make a judgment.
Right.
And then a parent, whoever has has filed the complaint, they appeal back to the committee, or they would go ahead and appeal directly to the superintendent or to the board?
It comes to the board.
Okay.
The decision of the committee is appealable only to the board.
Okay. So then I guess the only other question, which again maybe is going to be dealt with in the administrative rule. I know I ask a lot of questions at the CAL, so I'm sure you guys have records of that and can address it. But in terms of how this list is going to be kept updated, is it going to be something that on an annual basis we look at we look at the 256 and make sure, yes, they have kids in school, still enrolled in Greenville County schools, or they still live in Greenville County. If they're a community member, is that an annual thing, or is it going to be when you randomize and call the people, then you check that before?
Probably more likely when we've decided we're reaching, by whatever process they're randomized, we're reaching out to these people. It would probably be less cumbersome to do it that way than to do it on some annual or 6 months basis.
That's because 3 years is a pretty long time, and a lot of people.
Now, we may in the interim come back and add some people, bring to you all a recommendation to add some people, so everybody's term doesn't expire at the same time. See, right now, everybody's term would expire in 3 years, with the exception of the student appointment, because those are 1 year at a time. So we will likely come back, perhaps not next year, but somewhere after year one. And so we'd like to solicit again, and we'd like to recommend these people be added to the pool. Then we'll end up with some staggered terms.
And I think it'd be great to write that in the policy so that you actually have that ability to stagger those terms. So, okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion on the floor is to approve the attached list as appointments to the Material Review Committee for a 3-year term. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the Best Director reappointment. The recommended motion from the administration is to approve the reappointment of Andrew Jones to serve an additional 3-year term on the Building Equity Center for Tomorrow Board of Directors. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bush.
I move to approve the reappointment of Andrew Jones to serve an additional 3-year term on the Building Equity Center for Tomorrow Board of Directors.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is committee liaison reports. Anyone have a report? Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Advocacy Committee had originally planned to have one of our planned meetings of getting together the school board with local council persons in October. Originally, we were going to meet with the City of Greenville, City Council, and Mayor in October, and that is going to be postponed because of some scheduling issues primarily. And so that will not happen during the month of October. And just as a note, that means another chair will probably be setting those dates for sometime after November the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else? Hearing none. Next item is the monthly finance report. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. I don't believe Ms. Stack has a report this month. We traditionally do not have one in the month of September. But she is certainly here and available to answer any question that you all might have.
Is there any questions for Ms. Stack? Ms. Wells.
One kind of related to the fund balance that we had assigned for things like interventionists to help. We had a number of positions and funding that we assigned to help with remediation and the rest. And I thought at some point I'd heard that we had a lot of positions we had not filled. So just related to kind of all that funding, all that ESSER funding that we assigned, and then not fund balance, ESSER funding that we assigned to that. Sorry. Where are we with kind of on the spend on that? Because I guess the longer you go without having those positions filled, then that money needs to be allocated somewhere else, right?
We have a meeting scheduled, Robin, Phillip?
October the 3rd.
3 October, to review all the ESSER expenditures to date, to make sure we're all on the same page of how much ESSER funding is remaining, which would include, for example, unfilled interventionist positions. Not just this year's unfilled interventionists, but if we couldn't hire them this year, we're likely not able to hire them next year. That's going to add to that. I think we'll be able to kind of bring a package forward we'll get you the information on that before then, but probably looking at ESSER balance, some recommendations for how to spend that down, so we've got it spent before September of '24. And also, we have every reason to believe that we will have a healthy addition to general fund balance this year, and bring a recommendation to the board, hopefully either November or December, as to some recommendations for utilization of that fund balance. And just as a reminder, although I'm sure most of you remember this, if not all of you, anywhere we could take ESSER and journal entry, already budgeted general fund expenditure, and use ESSER funding for that purpose, as long as it would comply with the ESSER requirements. We've done that, which has allowed us to pump fund balance an additional amount. And of course, we don't disclose or discuss the fund balance until the auditors complete their work. At that point, it's an official add to the fund balance. And they should generally complete their work in November, and sometimes have generally speaking, their report at the November board meeting, not the December one. So we're all kind of lined up to move most of that forward at the same time.
So the shortfall on the spend, so to speak, I mean, are you 10%, 15%, 5%?
Maybe 12, 14 million, maybe.
Okay.
On the spend.
Yeah. There's some significant changes that will have to
Yeah,
happen.
I mean, significant in looking at it as an individual dollar amount, not significant looking at it as an overall percentage of the ESSER funding. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
As well. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Hearing none. Dr. Stiles, on behalf of myself and the board, would like to thank you for completing the task on the ad hoc committee for the board self-evaluation. Thank you very much. And on to the next one. So, okay, that's all our items. I'd entertain a motion to Ms. Levinas Wells.
I would just like to mention that today is Julie Morton's birthday. And Julie, on behalf of Expressions and My Flower, it's coming to you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Meeker.
Thank you, Ms. Levinas Wells.
Thank you for the advertising.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're through. I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and a second.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
That's kind of where that was 30.
Well, they are telling us to spend $8.8 million.
We'll do that this year. That's 3 to 2.
We do.
I said no.